The enskinment was done Thursday morning by the king of the Mamprugu traditional area, of which Bawku is said to be part, now Bawku Abdullahi Mahamud Sheriga, together with his royal court members. It started with the arrival of the families and sympathizers of the 4 Mamprugu Gate in Bawku. Soon, scores of people in around Nalirgu began to gather at the palace to witness the historic enskinment of a Bawku Naba by a Mamprugu overlord after nearly 40 years. However, while the processes were ongoing, members of the Northeast Regional Security Council, led by the Regional Minister Yidana Zakari, arrived at the palace in the company of heavily armed security forces. The presence of the Regional Minister briefly halted the process as the crowd erupted in opposition against his presence and demanded that he leave the place. After a brief opposition from the crowd, Mr. Yidana, following the intervention of the palace elders, was allowed to engage the overlord in a short private conversation. Whilst on his way out after the meeting with the overlord, the crowd began to hoot at him and his delegation. A palace elder later told Joy News that the minister had come to accompany the overlord to Accra upon the invitation of President Nana Akufo-Addo. The elder added that the overlord turned down the invitation and told the minister it was too late to stop the enskinment. The enskinment processes then resumed and soon ended with the announcement of Na Seidu Abagari with a chieftaincy titled Na Akuluga II as the new chief of the Bawku Paramount Skin. Speaking to Joy News, some of the residents believe this enskinment would ensure the return of peace in Bawku.
The ban has never solved any problem. Bans have killed many people. We have seen many deaths, we have seen many names, we have seen many properties and lives destroyed. It has to stop. The youth, I am a young man and I feel very bad. Every time I see pictures of Hussaisi youth being killed, as somebody who is a parent, I feel very much aggrieved. I am not happy.
There is nothing like a Supreme Court ruling. So indeed, what the Nigeria has done today is the best thing to do. Indeed, this is a stepping stone to a resolution of the conflict or crisis in Bawku. I would want to entreat politicians to respect the chieftaincy institution. So the government should rather pay attention or concentrate on how to ensure that lives and property are not lost there. But as for taking the chief home, in fact, the chief will soon be home. There is nobody on earth that will be able to stop the legitimate Bawku Naba from getting to Bawku.
I expect everything to return to normal as usual. We've had it before during the era of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president. He created this thing in the first place. But after the overthrow of Nkrumah in 1966, the then Nayiri, the 30th king of Mampuru, na Bongo Adam Badimso, and skin na Tampura Adam Zanjo as the 14th Bawku Naba. And you can go and check the history. Bawku returned to normalcy. Everything was moving on smoothly until the demise of the 14th Bawku Naba, na Tampura Adam Zanjo, before we had what we were having. So we are optimistic that everything will return to normalcy after this enskinment.
So everybody in Mampuru, Upper East, in Northeast, we are happy to see such a thing. For Nayiri to skin Bawku Naba, because all that place is for Yawa.
The new chief is a popular retired educationist whose grandfather was the 12th Bawku Naba. He was unanimously approved by the crowd as they burst into loud cheers amidst drumming and dancing. The new chief, Na Akuluga II, called for an end to all hostilities in Bawku.
Finally, the Bawku program that has existed for almost half a century has come to a close.
Elias Sutanko, reporting from Nalirgu for Joy News.
The government must back its words with action. I mean, the statement that government does not recognize what happened as legal. The regional and national houses of chiefs definitely will not recognize what happened. The Supreme Court already has indicated that this matter should not be brought to it. So it is reduced to a simple question of law enforcement, and the president has directed that those who perpetrated the act, the police should go after them and arrest them. And so everybody is just watching to see whether the government is true to its words and whether law enforcement will take the appropriate action.
The members of parliament from Bawku Central, Zebila, Binduri, Pusiga, Timpani, and Garu, who include Honorables Mahma Ayaraga, Cletus Avonka, Abanga Abdullahi, Haji Ladi Ayi Ayamba, Lydia Lamisa Kamvareba, and Honorable Albert Akuko Alazuga, that the Nairi, Na Bohugu Mahami Abdullah Sherga II has purported to enskin a rival chief for Bawku. This is unacceptable and should not come from a person of his stature. Such purported enskinment is null and void and will not be recognized by any institution under the 1992 Constitution. The government of Ghana must take every step to ensure the maintenance of peace and security and hold perpetrators of this criminal act accountable. Meanwhile, the members of parliament for the area call on the people of the Kusauk traditional area and its environs to remain calm and assure them that this unlawful conduct will not stand. It is not enough to condemn the act. It should go further than that and make sure that the fellow doesn't act as a chief. That is important. Not words alone, but action, by government. There cannot be a rival chief in Bawku. There is one chief recognized by law, and that should be respected by everybody under this constitutional dispensation. So government should not just say that we condemn it, but make sure it doesn't work. No rival chief exists in Bawku. That cannot be tolerated. I'm very much surprised that this incident could not be nipped in the bud, that it could have been prevented.
Welcome back. Now, we have joining us for this very important discussion on the Bawku situation, Colonel Festus B. Abuaje, retired, author, conflict and security analyst, UNDP consultant on disarmament, South Sudan, adjunct member, Center on Democratic Transitions, Ghana, and former member, Save the Children International Military Advisory Group. Professor Kwesi Ening is Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. We have Mohammed Tahiru Nambe, who is lawyer and Mamprusi rep on the Bawku Inter-Ethnic Peace Committee. Also, Maxwell Agbambila is lawyer for the Bawku Naba. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you very much for making time to join us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great. So, I'd like to ask to begin, and I would plead with Professor Enin and Colonel Festus Abuaje to patiently allow us to hear from the lawyers for the two sides. And then you definitely will come in and then help us to chat, the neutral, so to speak, way to peace. Of course, the two distinguished gentlemen, if you have any questions for any of these two lawyers, very much welcome. You could also ask them. So, Mohammed, the statement by the Republic is very clear, unequivocal, that what your clients have done is unlawful, is unconstitutional, is in breach of the peace, and because it is criminal, they ought to be arrested and prosecuted. What do you say? Please unmute your microphone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Senior Counsel Samson Ladi, I admire you from afar. We do not know ourselves, but I think we get to know ourselves. I greet everybody who is taking part of this important discussion. And I actually greet all the audience who want to be educated and get involved in bringing peace in Bawku.
Great.
First of all, Mr. Thompson, you recall that this is a Republican state. It is not a monarchy. And everything that we do is regulated by law, that is the Constitution of Ghana. And the Constitution of Ghana, per Article 19.5, indicates that nobody should be arrested. I just want to paraphrase. Nobody should be arrested for a law that does not exist. Let's contextualize it. What the Nairi did the other time, last week, what is unconstitutional about it? What is criminal about it? It is rather the state, it is rather the republic, it is rather the government, let me put it bluntly, that is going to create problem that does not exist. The Nairi has done or had done things in accordance with the Mampuruku or Mampurusi custom and tradition. Assuming without admitting that the newly enskined Bokunaba is arrested, what would be the charges preferred against him? And we are prepared to meet anybody in the courtroom. We will not say that we will take the law into our own hands. No. We will meet everybody in the courtroom and exonerate our client that he did not do anything untoward as far as the laws of the country is concerned. That is my first and foremost commentary in respect of that. If I'm going to go further, Mr. Sampson, Senior Counsel, I would indicate that the posturing of the government from the inception is not the best of it. The government has taken sides as if it is the agent of the Kusasis, which is not well, because they ought to be in between the protectors, the Mampusis and the Kusasis.
The government,
the government.
Mohammed, the government is the enforcer of law.
I agree with that.
Especially public law, including criminal law. So if the government's view is that there has been a process to enskin and which has actually been consummated in enskinning someone, contrary to the provisions in the Chieftaincy Act, and you know that the provisions are clear that if a person who is not hailing from and so on purports to put themselves up as a chief for which they are not, they are committing a criminal offense which is punishable by law.
Very well. We're talking about lineage here. I like that part of it. The Bokunaba who has been enskined by the Naivi, his grandfather was Bokunaba Kulga. His great-grandfather was Bokunaba Mambuda. His great-great-grandfather was Bokunaba Mahamba. His great-great-great-grandfather was Bokunaba Satim. He can trace his genealogy to the first Bokunaba. Aburabu Azoka Nichema, as it were, apart from his father Aburabu Azoka, who was enskined as Bokunaba in 1957 per Nkrumah's fiat. I don't think he can say his grandfather had ever been a Bokunaba before. So just opposing the two of them, who hails from a proper lineage of chieftaincy? Ghanaians will look at this. Therefore, what we are saying is this. What we are advocating is that it's a civil matter. It's purely a chieftaincy and a causes and matter of chieftaincy. Let anybody who is aggrieved go to the court and, as it were, get back his rights. Mr. Sampson, you are a lawyer. Your clients consult you most of the time, especially in civil matters. It's either they have a dispute with other people or other people have a dispute with them and institute a suit in the courtroom. Therefore, this one, we have the opinion that this falls within the realm of civil matter. The state does not have any hands in this. And causing the arrest of the newly enskined Bawku would rather exacerbate the situation. Therefore, the government should relook at it. There has been some threats, some pressure from especially the Kusasis that government should work it. I just heard Honorable Ayarga, that government should work its talk in enforcing the law. What is the beef of government here? So I rest it here, and then maybe when we proceed, I think things can unfold, then we'll get to know things better. Maybe if you have any further questions, that I will need to come in. Thank you.
Right. What do you say to the Kusasi youth movement, who both parties have issued statements, both youth groups have both issued statements, which I've had the opportunity of reading. What do you say to the Kusasi youth who suggest that what you are seeking to do is to do what they call domestic colonialism? That you are bringing a chief, naming a chief from another place, and bringing that person into Bawku, where there is already a chief. And that they have described as domestic colonialism. What do you say to that?
Samson, they have the right to describe it as they like. But the fact is that Bawku is part of Mampurugu. Mampurugu is Bawku. That's one fact that we have to establish. Secondly, there is no any colonialism. Bawku was established by Mampurugu and named it as Bawku. Bawku is Mampuruli. It is not Kusal. As I speak with you, my mother is Kusas. I speak fluent Kusal. Bawku is Mampuruli. If they owned Bawku, what was the name of Bawku before the name Bawku was made? That is aside. Besides that, we have about 17 to 18 canton chiefs in Bawku. For that matter, now some have been elevated. It is only 5 of them that are being Mampurusi chiefs, including Bawku. The rest, apart from Kulugungu, are Kusasis. Mampurusis are not advocated to go and become chiefs of Pusiga, which was begun by Mampurusi, and now Kusasis are the chiefs. Mampurusis are not advocating to become the chiefs of Zebila, which is Kusasi-dominated area. Mampurusis are not seeking to become chiefs of Garu and the rest. But Bawku, as we all know as lawyers, that the institution of chieftaincy is traditional and custom. Who began it? It is the Mampurusis that began the chieftaincy in Bawku. And there is nothing like colonialism as far as this thing is concerned. It is just that at a point in time, there has been a truncating of the processes and a lot of stress on the Nairi not to exercise his traditional role as the enskinner of the Bawku tradition. And Nairi thinks that at this time, that an ought to be removed. And then he's done exactly what the tradition demands of him.
So you mentioned something about Bawku being Mampuruli. Yes. Apart from the claims that they make about asking and making an example that you cannot purport to install a chief in Asante land and bring that chief to Fanti land to become the chief of Fanti land. The question that is being asked again, you say Bawku is Mampuruli land, is that when you read from various accounts, it is rather the Kusasi that dominates. And within the region and outside the region, nationally, collectively, the Kusasi far outnumber the Mamprusi. And there is one report constituted by the colonial administration then, which actually put it this way. Let me just read this portion of it for you. It says that both the red and white voters flow through the district and make it perhaps the most fertile district in that part of the country. Here it's talking about the northeastern corner of Ghana. And it says that the population is mainly Kusasi, but there are also Mamprusi, Moshi, Busanges, Frafres, and a few houses who live there permanently. However, the population of all other tribes put together does not come anywhere near the Kusasi figure, according to the 1951 census. There are over 147,000 Kusasis in the district. What do you say about that?
I do not intend to dispute any other thing, but it is, for me, it is a fallacy. You see, people tend to mix the traditional boundary with the executive boundary, the executive administrative boundary. Traditional boundary transcends beyond executive administrative boundaries. For example, you see the Asantehene, who has domain across the Bono area. Now, the Nairi owns Bawku from Nalergu, because the Nairi started in Bawku and moved to Gambaga, then and settled in Nalergu. Now, the Nairi enskinment Zwarungu, where you come from? Zwarungu, I know you are coming from Gambigo, but Gambigo is bounding Zwarungu. The Nairi enskinment the Zwarungu Naba. The Nairi enskinment the Tongorana, which is in Upper East region, not in the Northeast region. Something. One thing that people don't understand is that if you come to look at the demography of Bawku, there are many people who call themselves Kusasis. If you go into their origin, they are not Kusasis. I'll give you the example. If you go to Kugri, everybody knows now that the Kugri enclave, they are Moses, they are not Kusasis. Dominica Zimbe and Co., they used to call themselves Kusasis, but they know they are Moses. If you come to Bugri are Zabrames, not Kusasis, but they speak Kusal. If you go to Binduri, they are Mampursis, but they speak Kusal. It doesn't mean that they are Kusasis. The demography, which some of us are aware, the population is contestable. We can contest whoever thinks that Kusasis combined are more than the rest of the tribe. I do not think that is true. Besides that, chieftaincy is not talking about numbers. It's about authority of tradition. Who began it and who is supposed to be traditionally the originator of that institution. Not talking about population. And then Moso Bawku is separate from Pusiga. Bawku is separate from Bugri. Bawku is separate from Zabugu. Bawku is separate from Zebila. But they bring all these together and box them just to confuse the understanding of other people. Excuse my language. But as we are talking about Bawku now, Bawku is predominantly Mamprusis.
Okay.
Bawku exclusively with others, predominantly Mamprusis.
Okay.
Therefore, Samson, we are saying that there is no any colonialism here. The Nairi is exercising his traditional authority, and then he's exercising his birthright to enskin Bawku as it began in 1721 until Kwame Nkrumah came in and this thing translated.
All right. Now, I'm going to your colleague, Agbambila, on the other line. But before I do that, all right, let me go to Agbambila rather. I'll put these questions to him, and then you may come in there. Thank you for joining us, Maxwell Agbambila.
Thank you.
Great. So as far as your side is concerned, the Bawku Naba is concerned, the statement from the state, as in the Republic, is perfect, except that the youth movement is not happy that the arrest that government, has ordered has not happened 4 days on, right?
Yeah, that is so. But before I answer that question, may I please be allowed to respond to a few of the comments that my friend Mr. Lambe has made. Indeed, I find his comments a bit, some of them are quite bizarre and convoluted. He attempts to give a history of founding and all of that. Now, the truth is that the Kusasi people historically were an acephalous group of people who were organized around the Tindana system. So in every community, there's a Tindana or a Tingbandan in Kusal who is the head priest, and the whole community sort of revolves around him. In modern day, you can call him a chief, but they didn't exercise all of these functions of chiefs. The Tindanas don't wear big smocks and sit in state and perform all of those functions. What has brought us to this day is as a result of colonialism. And you all know that when the British came here, because of lack of human resource, they tried to use the indirect rule system. So in any community, when they go, they find somebody who looks like a prominent person. They appoint that person, and then they use him for the purposes of their indirect rule system. When they got to our part of the country, you see, the Mampusis are naturally, I'm told, people of trading nature. So they used to trade to Ouagadougou, present-day Burkina Faso, and Tinkudugu, and all of that. And the story is that people used to waylay them along those routes, and then they would rob them of their wealth. So their chief sent some of their men there to man those areas. And because they had chieftaincy, more like the Ashantis, anywhere they are gathered, they would appoint one of themselves to be chief. We didn't have any problem with them. They don't own land in Bawku. They don't appease any of the gods in Bawku. You can ask him if he can tell us that all the gods, or what we call Tingbana, around this whole area, which of them that their ancestors or they themselves in present day can appease. But we're living peacefully with each other, along each other. When the white man came and then they were looking for a chief, our people didn't understand what they were talking about. On the Mampusi side, they found a man whom everybody resolves around, and they called him chief because, in any case, they had seen a replica of that in the Dagbon area and in the Mamprugu area. The whites settled there before they got to Bawku. That is how come they appointed a Mampusi man to become what is today called Bawku Naba. And with the support of the white man, they had all these people they are today mentioning that now this, now that, and they call them the original chiefs of Bawku. It is not because they came and founded Bawku and started ruling Kusasi from day one. It was never the case. It was the advent of indirect rule that that gave them some power. So they started taxing a Kusasi man, and then the Kusasi started resisting. In fact, as far back as in 1932, the Kusasis had formed what was called the Kusasi Youth Association to fight for our independence. Now, when independence came in 1957, it coincided with the death of their Bawku Naba at the time. I think a certain Yeremia. Then the Kusasi said that we are not going to allow a Mampusi man to rule over Kusasi land again. That is how come the Kusasis mounted themselves up and then enskined the Naba Abukurago Azoka I. Issues arose. There was tension in Bawku. The departing governor established what is called the Afari Committee to look into the claims of the Kusasis, whether the Kusasis are the rightful people to be chiefs in Bawku or not. The report of that committee is clear and available for everybody to see. That the report came to the conclusion that the Kusasis are the rightful people to rule Bawku. The Mampusis indeed contested that report. The case traveled to the Court of Appeal, which was the highest court of the land. The highest court of the land, the Court of Appeal at the time, affirmed the decision of the Committee of Inquiry and said that Kusasis are the rightful people to rule Bawku. You can ask Lawyer Nambi whether he sees with that court, that judgment of the court or not. Ask him whether he can produce a single full-blooded Mampusi man in Bawku. All of them. Their mothers are either Moshi, Isa, Kusasi, or Hausa. There is no single full-blooded Mampusi man in Bawku. The reason is, as I said earlier, that they came there for purposes of policing their trade route. And you know that it is men that you would send to do those things, even today, talk less of the days of old. So this story that the Nairi Fair settled in Bawku or founded Bawku, it's a total falsehood to the greatest of respect.
So he says something, that he doesn't understand the government statement about arrest. And the report you refer to, I will confirm portions because I hold them here in my hands.
Fantastic, Senior.
But hold on, yeah. Then he says he doesn't understand what the government is seeking to say. Because if it's a matter he finds to be that of a civil nature. Now, in Article 277 of the Constitution, it says that unless the context otherwise requires, chief means a person who, hailing from the appropriate family and lineage, has been validly nominated, elected, or selected, and enstooled, enskinned, or installed as a chief or queen mother in accordance with the relevant customary law and usage. Now, Mohammed's point is that this is what has been done. So how can you call this process as a criminal one and therefore ask that there should be an arrest? Well, how will you respond to that?
Oh, but I think that with respect to him, that's a very bizarre and unfortunate interpretation of the law. He knows as much as I do that at the very least there's an offense called
Okay, Maxwell Agwambila, I'll plead with you to say you disagree with his point and then proceed.
Very well. I mean, he knows as much as I do that there's an offense called breaches of the peace. So if I get up and then go to Kumasi, because there's a Kusasi community in Kumasi, I mass up my people, or I get people to come to Bawku and say I'm going to be Asantehene, knowing fully well that what I'm going to do is likely to provoke Ashantis to react. Is that not criminal? He knows that every civil offense has a criminal equivalent in our books.
Some civil offenses.
So if you go and sit there and
some civil offenses, not all.
Engage in an act that you say it is purely civil, which has a criminal equivalent, we are saying that the state should activate the criminal equivalent of what they have done. And in any case, today, he's saying that we should go to court.
How do you, wait, hold on. How do you respond to the facts, which are facts that he speaks about the places where the Nairi is the one in charge of enskinning the chiefs?
Samson, I heard him say the Nairi inskins Zwarungu and all of that. I'm not a Fraframan. I'm not a Napt. If Zwarungu or Zwarungu people feel that they want to go to Nairi to be inskinned, that is their choice. I mean, we respect that. But as far as we are concerned as Kusasis, we are not willing to go to anybody with an interpreter to be inskinned because they speak Mampuli. I don't speak Mampuli. Again, the person that they purport to inskin is supposed to come and be Bawku Naba. Bawku is a paramountcy with 25 divisions. Who are Kusasis? Is it his case that, so today, if the Zebila skin is vacant, the Zebila chief should go to Bawku with an interpreter to be skinned as a Bawku Naba? And he doesn't see that is colonialism or apartheid? How is that in this present-day democracy? That I should be forced to go to somebody whose language I don't speak to be skinned as a chief and to be controlled and ordered about by him? I think that, I mean, with the greatest of respect, that leaves much to be desired.
Okay, now
what we are saying is that the evidence is clear.
Now hold on.
Both in numerical strength.
Now hold on.
And the position
now
of
hold
the
on.
law.
Let me go back. Let me go back to Mohammed. So Mohammed, you know, your colleague has been referring to documentation.
Yes.
And first of all, the committee report he speaks about. I'll read a portion of that committee report to you. It says that the committee is satisfied. That is at page 14 of the report. The committee is satisfied that Abograbo Azoka was not appointed, but elected by his own people and installed as the chief of the Kusasi area, in place of the usual Nairi appointed Bawku Naba. The committee is satisfied that the old method of appointing a chief to go to Bawku and rule the Kusasis is greatly resented by the Kusasis. We feel that we feel that it is as undemocratic as it is dictatorial for the Nairi who claims to be the nominal owner of the land to send one of his Mampurusi subjects to rule the Kusasi as their chief. We feel that the Kusasi will develop politically and socially as well as economically better under their own chief than under an imported chief whom they resent. The recognition of a Kusasi chief will no doubt receive the approval of all who know the internal affairs of the Mampurusi state as it is today. Finally, we humbly pray to report to Your Excellency that Abograbo Azoka has been customarily elected and installed the chief of the Kusasi area. And this was signed by SD Opokua Fari, Chairman, Nanayao Ajiman Badu Domahene, who is member, and then Laurie Canton III, Tumokoro, who is also a member. And Agwambila proceeds to tell you that this decision of the committee to the governor was reaffirmed by the Court of Appeal. And in the Court of Appeal decision, which I also hold in my hands, it doesn't say anything to the contrary. What will be the basis? What will be the basis to jettison this history plus, you know, quasi-judicial and judicial decisions in favor of Abograbo Azoka? Okay, I understand that we have lost Mohammed briefly. Yes, thank you very much. Mohammed, I understand you are back. So how will you respond to this? Hello, Mohammed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Great, yes.
Senior Counsel, I'm grateful for this question. Before I go to your question specifically, let me address just two before I proceed respectfully.
That's all right.
One thing is about the colonialization. Maxwell knows too well that the Mampusi dynasty started in Bawku in 1721. The Union Jack was posted in Kampaga for the Northern Territories to become a protectorate in 1902, at which time Mahama Mamboda was the Bokunaba, the eighth Bokunaba. So the statement that the colonialists came with chieftains to Bawku is fallacious. In fact, it's not correct. Secondly, Senior Counsel, you are a Northerner. You know, even in Bolga, there are Tindanes and there are chiefs. Tindanes don't perform the function of chiefs. Neither do chiefs perform the function of Tindanes. If Kusasis were Tindanes, he himself says that they were first earth priests. It doesn't mean they own the land. Earth priests. So that also settles that matter. The third point is that about the report in 1957 that said Abograbo Azoka was the Bokunaba. In fact, it must be put in record that Abugrago at that time was the first Kusasi Bokunaba. And
that was after the Mamprusis have been in the helm for 150 years, we are told, 150, according to the report.
But absolutely. Let's even agree with that, with the committee, that over 150 years. Can you imagine that? And we are saying that there was a political wing. When we are going to political, undertones, you realize that President Kwame Nkrumah had a problem with the Nigeria at that time because of the the Northern People's Party vis-a-vis the CPP. And therefore, there was a political undertone. When the report came, you recall that the Mampusis went to the High Court with a writ of certiorari to set aside that the findings and the recommendations of the committee, if you recall, senior counsel. And the High Court granted that certiorari. It was there that the government at that time appealed at the Court of Appeal in 1958. What happened? At that time, the Bokunaba, Yeremia Mahama, who was the 13th Bokunaba, and was supposed to be a respondent at the High Court, the Court of Appeal, was exiled. So the government, for that matter, Abugrago Azoka, had a one-way traffic. The person who was supposed to be the respondent was not in court to even defend himself. You can see the travesty of justice in there.
So, question.
Yes,
Has that decision of the court validly made that you are aggrieved about? Has that decision been set aside?
Long time ago, because there have been actions after that decision. Let me tell you, in 1966, when Nkrumah was toppled, 1966, they passed, NLCD 112, restoring all chiefs, not only Bawku, because over 100 chiefs were affected by Kwame Nkrumah's regime. And imposters who didn't hail from any lineage of chiefs or chieftaincy were made chiefs because of political expediency. Now, NLCD 112 came to normalize that anomaly and restored the Bawku's kinship to the Mampusis. In 1967, the Nigeria enskined a Mampusi man, Alhaji Adam Zangwego, called Tampuri. He ruled from 1967 until he died in 1981. So there have been an intervening action after that ruling.
Yeah. So my question now to you will be this.
Yes.
What is it that you took to the Supreme Court and withdrew on Tuesday, the 29th of April, 2003? What was that?
Yes. Senior counsel, I'm most grateful once again. It is simple as that. PNDC Law 75 conferred on Abugrago Azoka posthumously at the time that the law was passed. He had died, making him the Bokunaba, amongst others. And this Canaan Alhaji Adam Zangwego, who was the legitimate Bokunaba and died in 1981 as Bokunaba, posthumously, once again. Both of them, the law satisfied them posthumously. Now, they conferred on Abugrago Azoka, and therefore, Anichema Abugrago Azoka benefited from that act because the father had died. Going forward, when the 1982 Constitution was promulgated, my Lord, Sinda, you realize that Article 270 talks about how chieftaincy is going to be in the Constitution. It says that no institution, not even Parliament, can pass a law conferring on anybody chieftaincy. Chieftaincy must be in accordance with tradition and custom. I believe the Mampusis think that that law is the PNDC Law 75 that confers on Abugrago Azoka the chieftaincy contravenes that part of the Constitution. So they went to the court seeking for the interpretation of PNDC Law 75. This counsel will recall that Article 130 confers on the Supreme Court the jurisdiction of interpreting the Constitution. Is that not correct?
That's right.
So to the extent that the Mampusis thought that PNDC Law 75 was in conflict of the Constitution, they wanted the Supreme Court of Ghana to nullify that law.
Right. And the Supreme Court delivered itself this way. When you appeared and asked the court that you were withdrawing the case, the Supreme Court said that the application to discontinue is granted.
Yes.
But without liberty to apply under PNDC Law 75 and under Article 270 and 277 of the 1992 Constitution.
Yes.
And then there was cost that was given against the first defendant. These were the judges, Justice Akwa, Justice Ajoy, Justice Brobe, Justice Sambadu, and Justice Dr. Seth Chum.
Yes.
So the court said you are withdrawing your suit to challenge PNDC Law 75. They agree that you discontinue the case, but you are not permitted to come back to the courts, either under PNDC Law 75, which we understand had been spent, if you like, by that time or repealed, and you cannot also come to the court under Article 270 and 277. I just read 277. And 270 is what you just paraphrased a while ago. So this means that you appear to have lost the opportunity to ever go back to court on this matter. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, his line is frozen again. I wanted to conclude with him and then, okay. Yes. Hi, Mohammed. Hello, Mohammed. Okay. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. Hi, Mohammed. Please unmute yourself. Unmute your mic. Please unmute your mic. Okay. Maxwell. Hello, Mr. Agwambila.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Great. So in 2003, they were in court, and then they withdrew the case. And the court said the case has been discontinued, but they cannot come back under PNDC Law 75, which was the chieftaincy restoration of Statute of Chief. And they cannot also come under the Constitution under Article 270, which is about, who a chief will be and how to install a chief. And then Article 277, which defines a chief. So my question to you two is that this was a withdrawal or a discontinuation of a suit. So what are the implications of that?
Yeah, thank you. You see, first, I believe that it is because of this ruling. That is why they have, for the past so many years after 2003, not tried to go back, refused to go back to court. Of course, it is as clear as it is on the paper. And you are a lawyer, fortunately. You know that when you apply to withdraw your matter, whether or not you are given liberty to reapply will depend on the judge's assessment of your case in the first place. So judges don't just say, go and come back, or go and don't come back. They assess the strength of the case that you have presented before them. If it's a genuine error, which you want to withdraw and put your house in order and come back, then judges always give you liberty to reapply. The Supreme Court had assessed the documents and the arguments that they had made. And mind you, we all know, the three of us who are engaged in this argument, that the Supreme Court is not a place that you go and then when you file your papers, they put somebody in the box and the person comes to testify. Of course, unless in matters like election petitions. When you start seeking a constitutional interpretation, it is entirely about documentation. And by the time they were going to withdraw, both parties had submitted and filed their respective documentation back in their case. And seeing the hollowness of their case, they applied to withdraw with liberty to reapply. They actually wanted to reapply. The learned justices of the Supreme Court looked at the relative strength of the cases presented by both parties and said to them that your liberty to withdraw is granted, but you don't come back to us either under PNDC Law 75 or Articles 270 or 277. That is the reason why they have always refused to go back to court. Now, when it pleases them, today they are saying that what they have done what they did in Nalirugu is civil matter, so we should go to court. If you felt so strongly, like the argument that he's making about political decisions and PNDC Law 75 and all of that were wrong, you can always go to court. In any case, that ruling that you are talking about is from the Supreme Court, and we all know that the Supreme Court has liberty to depart from its previous decision. Yet, they refuse to go to court.
Right.
And as far as documentations are concerned, look, these Zampusi people, when they sue them, they will shift the goalpost. Before they went to the Supreme Court in 2003, we had a peace accord in Damango.
Hold on, I'm coming. I want Mohammed. Mohammed, can we hear you now? Hello, Mohammed. Okay, so we are going to call Mohammed on the phone, rather, so that we can conclude with him and you guys, so that we have Colonel Festus Abuaje and Professor Kwesienin to help us moving forward.
Can I finish my point, please?
Wait, just hold on. I'm holding the Damongo Accord, so to speak, in my hands here. So we are proceeding piecemeal and in a very orderly way. As Mohammed is being brought back on the line, this is the question, my next question I have for him. I'm holding in my hand a letter from Akufo-Addo, Prempeh and Co., written on the 29th of July 2003. And it was written to the Secretary, Legal Advisor, the Bawku Skin Lineage, Solidarity Organization Elders, P.O. Box 56, Bawku, Upper East Region. And it says, attention, Justice Retired B. Yakubu, Bawku Skin Affair. It's very brief and it is important for context because you see, the Kusasi group have been saying there's a Supreme Court decision, and the Mamprusi group continue to say that there's actually nothing to hold on to. So I'm reading that and then ask Mohammed to a simple question, then we'll proceed. It says, and this is written and signed by Philip Addison for Akufo-Addo, Prempeh and Co. It says, as you are no doubt aware, on 29th April 2003, we discontinued our action before the Supreme Court, whereupon the action was struck out. We took the action because it came to our notice after we had filed our writ in the Supreme Court that the very law we were challenging, the Chieftaincy Restoration of Statutes of Chiefs Law 1983, PNDC Law 75, had been repealed. In other words, the law we were challenging did not exist, and therefore there was no need for us to proceed with the case. It has come to our notice that some persons, notably of Kusasi extraction, have been deliberately distorting both the proceedings in the Supreme Court and the import of the proceedings. The effect of the action in the Supreme Court is that nothing was adjudicated upon, and the court made no pronouncement on the merit of the case that had been brought before it. The status quo ante was restored as if nothing had changed. Contrary to what some detractors are saying, this discontinuance did not put the Mamprusis in a worse position than before. Absolutely nothing changed. Of course, we know that what changed was that the court said you cannot come back on either that law or Article 270 or 277. Then it continues. The way forward now is to treat the issue as a pure chieftaincy matter to be determined in the chieftaincy tribunal. Says in the chieftaincy tribunal, instead of the Supreme Court, is it? It says that we urge caution and patience so that we do not stumble twice in our legitimate quest to right a wrong. In due course, we will send an outline of the precise course of action we intend to make and the precise chieftaincy tribunal in which we shall initiate the process. This, in a nutshell, is the state of affairs relating to the Bawku scheme. Hopefully, you will find this a satisfactory explanation of the present state of affairs. Respectfully submitted, Philip Addison, signed. So my question to you now is, this was your lawyer's advice, that yes, a civil chieftaincy matter. So you take it to a chieftaincy tribunal. And he said you were actually in the process to do so. What has happened? Mohammed, unmute, please.
Senior counsel, can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Very well. First of all, we are lucky to have you as a lawyer. And it makes the discussion very lively and very, very educating. You and I know that when you go to the court, you have the liberty to discontinue, but it is a discretionary something that the court can exercise. Yesterday at the High Court in Bolgatanga, I was there with lawyer Maxwell Abambila on the other side. And there was a similar application with the court, asking for liberty to come back. And the court said it is discretionary. The judge granted it. So they don't look at the merit of the matter before they grant. It is discretionary. Counsel, what they went to court was about interpretation. You and I know that matters of chieftaincy must start somewhere. By the Constitution and the Chieftaincy Act, you have to start from the traditional authorities. If you are not satisfied, you go to regional House of Chiefs. If you are dissatisfied with the verdict, you go to National House of Chiefs. If you are dissatisfied, then you go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of Ghana does not have original jurisdiction as far as matters and causes of chieftaincy is concerned. So the matter before the Supreme Court at that time was purely an interpretational matter, not a chieftaincy matter.
Right.
That should rest it. Now, the reason why we did not go to court, actually, if you read lawyer Addison's submission to us as his client, he said at the appropriate time. But it should have been a reasonable time. And at the time that we were supposed to go to court, not even the court, but to invoke the other chieftaincy tribunals, I think there was some disagreement in respect of when to go and when not to go. Something I will tell you that in 1983, the National House of Chiefs has a court to pass a ruling. I am sure you have it because I know you are so that you have the dexterity and then you do so much research. There is a ruling of the National House of Chiefs in 1983, saying that Anichim Aburago's father, who is Aburago Azoka, was a commoner, and says that the Mampusis were the legitimate chiefs of Bawku.
Okay, but please don't take us. Please, respectfully, Mohammed, don't take us back. I'm talking after 2003, when your lawyers wrote and advised you that the case has been discontinued, the status quo ante remains. You are now going to a chieftaincy tribunal. What happened after that? Why?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You and I, we know we are lawyers. And we go to court and we implore all tactics to see how we can work it out for our case to be won. If we did not go, then there must be a problem. The problem is not because we didn't want to go, but even in-house, we were thinking of the timing to go. And at the proper time, we would go. But we think also that we have had other legal opinions that, no. Once there was a master of the chief's ruling, then it makes our case a legitimate. Therefore, there was no need to go to anything. But we are trying to assess all this. But the Nigerian thinks that, no, he can go ahead and do the enskinment.
Okay. Now, finally, this reconciliation consultations among Kusasi, Mamprusi, Bisa, Moshi, Dagomba, and Hausa delegation from Bawku held at Damango from Monday, June 4 to Friday, June 8, 2001, under the auspices of the Bawku Peace Initiative. Among others, it was agreed that point 5, that the Bawku Naba be recognized and given the necessary courtesies and respect by all, including important official guests to the town. Point 8, that you are going to embark on a sustained program of stopping or at least curbing the purchasing and stockpiling of arms in the district. And the participants and signatories to this were from the Kusasi delegation, Alhaji Abdul Karim Apot, an elder, Thomas Abila, who has been speaking as a spokesperson for the Bawku Naba, was also participant and signatory. John Akparebu Indebugre, youth representative, God bless his soul. Madam Lucy Awuni, women's rep. And then from the Mamprusi side, you had Seidu Akalifa Bugri, elder. Alhaji Sulemana Yeremia, elder. And that is significant. Clement Bugri, youth rep. And then Madam Hawa Ninchama, women's rep. Then there was a Bisa delegation, Moshi delegation, Dagomba delegation, and Hausa delegation. What happened to these two?
I believe it is coming to us, right? The question is coming to me.
Yes. So you had your representation at this Damango process, which agreed to this roadmap. So why the developments now?
We did not. I don't think we went against that. We have been. Look, the historical antecedent was that before the agreement, any political leader who came to Bawku was denied going to the Bawku Naba's palace, and he came as palace. Until that was signed, so that both agreed that anybody who came from Accra as a political man can go there. After the agreement, nobody actually impeded anybody whatsoever from going there or coming to us. It is rather the Kusasis who have a problem if somebody comes to us at that time, the regent of Bawku. So I don't think we have gone against that one, but that one also does not oust us of our right to pursue whatever is rightful to us.
Okay. Maxwell, I suppose both sides at this moment that the youth groups are agitated. I have seen press conferences and the pronouncements are clearly something that portends a danger, particularly if there is a movement of the now enskinned, from the Nayiri to Bawku. What is it that you are doing to avoid that, any matters? Briefly.
Yeah, thank you, but I think that you have given my friend a lot of time, and he said so many things that I beg that you give me time to respond to, so that they don't fly.
I give you 2 minutes.
Hey, my brother, 2 minutes may not be enough. It means that I have to rattle. All this is mentioning of 17 Bawku Naba, first Bawku Naba, and so on and so forth. There are two things I say about that. Before Ghana became independent, there were many governors. That is supposed to say that Ghanaian territory is the property of Britain now, after we gained independence and determined for ourselves that one self-rule. I think that's neither here nor there. I've explained to you how come Imam Pusis started becoming chiefs in Bawku. I am a Kusasi man. I live in Accra. We have an Accra Kusasi chief. When he comes home, we call him Accra Nab, Accra like Accra chief. It doesn't mean that he can get up and say, that he owns Ghana. And I told you to ask him whether he can show me one full-blooded Mamprisi man from Bawku. Their mothers are all Kusasis, Moshis, Isers, and so on and so forth. It lends credence to the fact that when their men were coming to Bawku, they came there for business purposes and not to come and found it. When they came there, there were human beings living there. That's how come they married their daughters and have them as their sons today.
All right.
I also am worried that when there is a decision, whether it's a committee of inquiry report or a court ruling or a legislation, which favors Kusasi, Number says that one is political. First, the committee of inquiry report of Nana Afari is a political one. The judgment is a political one. What went to the Court of Appeal was an appeal. It wasn't a matter that was litigated. And he knows that when you file an appeal, it's a matter of documentation. So whether the client was there or not, whether the chief was there or not, it's neither here nor there. In any case, the Court of Appeal was not going to recall him to come and enter the box. He knows that. When he files an appeal, does he call people to come and testify again? We all do these cases. We go to court. You can be in court litigating for years. Your client never appears. Once the lawyer is there and the necessary documentations are filed, the court will come to a decision one way or the other one day.
All right.
So why is it that when it comes to the Kusasi, any decision that we procure, which is in our favor, number them to come and say that, oh, it was political. Yes, it's not political. In fact, they have been the biggest beneficiaries of partisan politics in this country from inception.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maxwell. I'm sorry, but this is how much time will allow us. Thank you for your time. Now, let's take a quick break. When we return, we have Colonel Festus Abuaje, and we also have Professor Kwesi Enin. I hope that this morning we have given you sufficient both perspective, historical and current. Now you know where the two sides stand, and we know where, if things are not managed in a certain way, where it will get to. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. So earlier, we were speaking to the parties involved in the Bawku chieftaincy crisis that have gotten to a head, and at a point where if care is not taken, things might just get really, really bad. According to the analysts, according to governments, national security, this may become a point through which this country will suffer if care is not taken. So we're speaking to Mohammed Tahiru Nambe, who is lawyer for and Mamprisi rep on the Bawku Inter-Ethnic Peace Committee, and then Maxwell Agbambila, who is lawyer for the Bawku Naba. Now, we will go to the domestic debt exchange matters and speak to Bright Simmons, Godfred Bokwing, John Ampochia Kuma, Dr. John Ampochia Kuma, and then Felix Kwachi Ofosu. We'll speak to them shortly. But now let's have Colonel Festus Abuaje and Professor Kwesi Enin on. Now, having heard the two of these sites, what can you say as your preliminary to this discussion? I'm going to come to you with direct questions, including that the Kusasi youth have issued a statement. They say they are disappointed in government, that it ordered the arrest of the newly enskinned, and those involved. Yesterday, they said 3 days on, nothing has happened, and they themselves are going to, because they know where they can find them. If the government doesn't know where to find them, they will go effect the citizen arrest and hand them to police. The Mamprisi youth also have a position that what must be done will be done, and the Kusasis will not be able to do anything. So first of all, listening to these two sides, Professor Enin, what can you say summarily?
Oh, well, I think this is something that has been boiling and been accepted. The state of Ghana has failed to provide the leadership and to prevent this from escalating to where we find ourselves to be today. And I think it spans from the issue of intelligence gathering, how that intelligence is used, who gets the intelligence, and the way it is subjected politically. And I think the decision to arrest this new Naba, the hooting of the regional minister, the decision that the arrest must be effected, but also very surprisingly, the decision by the RECSEC, the Northeast RECSEC, not to follow what the government is intending to do, seems to create a certain uncertainty as to what the core action must be. But let me make this very clear to the listeners, Samson, that no single chieftaincy issue must and can supersede the national interest of the sovereign people of the Republic of Ghana. That any chieftaincy issue that becomes problematic to such an extent that the state's survival becomes an issue must be dealt with all the extraordinary political powers that the state has.
And that's where I return to you on your judgment that the state has failed. And that's why we are where we are. Now, Colonel Festus Abuaje, listening to the two sides, what can you see? Look in the crystal ball. Please unmute your mic.
Sorry, good morning once again, and my compliments to Prof and their learned friends on both sides of the divide. You cannot discuss this current state of affairs in Bawku without, putting the approach of the government at the center of the discourse. I find it very, very difficult to think that, and indeed to admit that the government knew about the decision to install a new Bawku Naba in Alerigu so late that the only course of action by the government was to fly a helicopter there to invite him on the 15th, that's the Nairi, to come to Accra. You and I know that it wasn't going to work. I err on the side of caution that the state knew or ought to have known that there were preparations to enskin a new Bawku Naba, and that if that event was allowed to take place, it was further going to complicate the ongoing conflict in Bawku proper. And therefore, using my military mind, the government should have, we call it interdiction, not to have allowed the forces that were advancing to the battlefield to arrive before now finding the capabilities to destroy them. The government should have done everything possible, including deployment of security forces in Alerigu, to stop the enskinment from taking place. Now, why the government didn't do that is another question that the government needs to answer. So I go very much with the idea that there had been an intelligence failure on the part of the government, whether deliberately or not deliberately.
Okay, so the two of you are on the same side. You agree on the failure of the state, intelligence failure, which has led to this. Now, Prof. Enin, So what? The government was supposed to have used military force to stop the, enskinment processes at the Nairi? Is that what you're saying?
Far from it. I traveled to that area between the 10th and the 16th of December last year to do some field work focusing on vulnerabilities to violent extremism and radicalization in the 5 northern regions. And the interviews in Nalerigu and around pointed to the enskinment of a new Bawku. That there were activities going on around the palace and amongst the leadership of the Mampusis. So it is impossible for me to think that the government didn't know about this. But there are 2 possible, pathways. And here my big brother Festus came to me. Either there was no intelligence failure in that sense, that the intelligence was picked up, the analysis done, and then it was sent up the chain of command, but at a certain point was truncated by somebody. 2, when His Excellency the President expresses his disquiet about the possible dangers that this might cause the country, I think the real question that should be asked, particularly knowing and learning from the Yendi crisis, the Dagon crisis, is for him to question who ought to have gotten a handle on this. Where did the intelligence get lost? Because I've spoken to enough of the people on the ground to know that the reports were written and they were sent up the chain. So where did they get truncated? Whose interests are being served? This is no more a Bawku crisis.
Okay. So
this is a Ghana crisis. And it is a Ghana crisis.
Why is it a Ghana crisis?
Because if we had time and I have to disaggregate the multiple interests who are feeding into this thing, they are not only located in the northeast or in Bawku, they are located in Accra. Those who are exploiting the insecurity through, trafficking networks are also benefiting. So the kinds of blowback that will happen if this new chief enters Bawku is that no amount of military force will be able to quell the anger and the violence between the Kusasis and the Mampusis.
All right.
Because they've been finding arms for years.
Okay. So
and they've been waiting for this day.
So what should happen and what should not happen? The Kusasi youth say they know where the people are. They will go arrest this newly enskinned and take him together with those who are involved to the police. What do you say?
Well, they should give the intelligence to the police and let the state act. We need to see the state taking the lead and the proactive steps.
They believe the state doesn't mean it. That's why it has not been able to effect any arrest since the announcement.
Then we are looking at war. When we are looking at war between these 2 groups and that insecure situation being exploited by all kinds of other people.
How do you stop the war? How do you stop the war?
It can only be stopped by the state being responsible and saying, this is why we've been voted into power. This is why we have our security agencies. They are trained. Let's give them the chance to deliver, and they'll be able to deliver. The state must be seen to the work.
Colonel Festus Abuaje, the Minister of Defense was in Parliament and said this was not a chieftaincy matter. You and I discussed this last week. He said this was not a chieftaincy matter. It was a criminal conduct. Has he been proven wrong?
Well, he doesn't need to be proven wrong. In fact, that statement was inaccurate. And secondly, that statement was inappropriate because all of us who are involved in conflict resolution know that one of the things you should not do is to put labels on the parties and make them look as if they are stupid. They don't know what they're about. So for instance, listening to Mahmoud and Maxwell, you need to give them your ears and try to figure out, understand very deeply where they are coming from, and not to rubbish what either party is saying. So yes, some of the activities or actions might be criminal, but they are informed by the beliefs of the people who are involved. And I would have wished that the defense minister didn't go to parliament to make that kind of statement, and then of course draw fire from a member of parliament who also responded. And I've suggested that in that context, parliament has become a proxy battlefield instead of being a proactive, entity in.
Do you share the view that we are at a point where war, quote unquote, is almost inevitable in Bawku?
First of all, if your disposition is towards the use of force, which is what I think, that the government has consistently been predisposed to the use of force, then you might ignore or disregard other approaches short of the use of force to try and mediate, such conflicts. It's not too late. The situation is very complicated by other external factors that I think Prof was alluding to, but it's not too late. And I think that the prospects are also very, very difficult.
Sorry, it's not late. It's not late to do what?
It's not late to try and get the parties to de-escalate, to roll back a bit. For instance, I would not support the idea of arresting Alhaji Saidu Abagri. I wouldn't subscribe to that. But I think the government can use other mechanisms to get the Nairi to redraw that event, and put it on hold until such time that other approaches have been,
just hold on. Professor Kwesienin, is this possible that the Nairi will agree to a withdrawal of what has already been done? Hello, Prof. Enin. Please
that
unmute
will almost be impossible.
Sorry.
The state. Yes.
Is it possible?
No, that will always be impossible. I mean, the state will have. No, he will lose face, and he can't afford to lose face.
They are determined to bring him. They are determined to bring him to. They are determined to bring him to Bawku, and the Kusasi are also determined to stop them.
Well, the lines are drawn. I think I really like my big brother's, optimistic view that we haven't reached the tipping point. And I think probably we need a larger stakeholder group, because for Colonel Abuaje to present this argument, for me, shows the experience and the nuance that he's bringing to the table. He's seen war before. He's seen firepower being used in anger. And I think his concern here is that, look, we can't allow our own citizens to turn this firepower against each other because the state is only interested in using the military force.
Right.
Because if I can about this argument further, I mean, the state routinely will only dust off, let's bring in cash, let's send in more troops. But I think Abuaji's point is, it's time for us to begin to look at alternatives and to move back or to push back from the brink.
Okay, so gentlemen, I'd like you to leave us on the note of listing at least 2 important things that the state or the parties should be doing. Can we start with Colonel Festus Abuaji? There is a suggestion already that radio should be, as it were, halted. There should be the NMC and those parties should come in and simply, if you like, quote unquote, ban radio or media broadcasts in the area for now. What will you say? 2 things, just list them, that the state or the party should be doing now.
Before my 2 points, let me suggest that we also need the media as part of the public information effort. So if we close down the radio stations, how are we going to educate, the population? First point, that some of the mechanisms that both parties, that's Mohammed and Maxwell, expatiated, did not mention presidential initiatives. But former President Kufuor played a role. Vice President Mahama played a role. And within the same year, late President J.A. Mills also played a role. In fact, he traveled to Bolgatanga to meet the parties. Now, I would suggest that the incumbent president seizes this opportunity to travel to the area, whether Narerigu or whether Bolga or wherever it is, in order to try and, get the parties to tone down. But all the rhetorics that are going on are not helpful. Secondly, I've said previously that these kinds of protracted social conflicts are never resolved through the use of force. It's not going to happen. Not today, not tomorrow. At the end of the day, we need to sit around the table with the parties and facilitate mediation or whatever it is. So the government, being the central authority, must use other institutions within the state and get the parties to sit around the table and talk. But the government, I believe, can write to the National House of Chiefs through appropriate channels to get the National House of Chiefs or Regional House of Chiefs or whatever it is, to take an active role or play an active role in this. These are the 2 points. First,
thank you.
We need to hear from the president, and he should not speak anything in Accra. He should go to the area and talk to both parties on the ground. And then, at the same time, he must convene a certain process. Now, who are part of the process? Traditional leaders, religious bodies, civil society organizations, for instance, who put on the table the Damango Accord and established the interethnic Bawku, peace committee and so on. All of these can be explored to try and resolve this conflict.
And the pursuit to arrest should be aborted. Thank you very much. Let's go to Professor Enin.
That will not work.
2.
Yes.
First is to recognize the emotional side of intractable conflicts. And listening to the 2 representatives, they all have the history, they all have the way they interpret it, they all have the legal side. All that is underpinned by these strong emotions of a sense of righteousness. And we need to recognize emotions has played a critical role in it when we try to solve or resolve in conflict intractability. 2, is that we need an efficacious state, a state that is responsive, a state that is dialogic, a state that uses its own established institutions to push the boundaries of the powers of the state. We are now seeing a very ad hoc use of that state power. And it is that failure and ad hocism that has brought us to where we are. The state must be more responsible.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for making time to help us. And we hope that all well-meaning Bawku and Mamprusi citizens across the country are listening, and those who have the influence necessary should also be assist to make sure that this works. As we know, our friends from our neighbors are already trooping in through that area, and as we have been told by Vladimir Chidanso and the rest of them, this could be the gateway for terrorist infiltration in the state of Ghana, and we don't need that. This show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider. My Way Insurance. Dial *165# on the MTN to join. And then St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. And I can't forget to also bring to your attention that we are informed that the Northeast Regional Security Council has not formally communicated a decision not to comply with the directive to arrest the chief. This is the information, that the Northeast Regional Security Council has not formally communicated a decision not to comply with the directive to arrest the chief. We'll be right back.